This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Cathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started. Hi, welcome back to Late Boomers. I'm Cathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a really important conversation lined up for you, and it's one that touches on resilience and healing and the lasting effect of childhood experiences.
Yes, our guest today is Wendy Correa, author of My Pretty Baby. Her story dives into something called ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences, and how those experiences could shape the rest of our lives, both the struggles and the triumphs.
Yeah, that's really true. And ACE, A-C-E, is a term that comes out of decades of research showing that early trauma, things like neglect or abuse or household dysfunction, which I think a lot of people experience, can ripple through a person's health and relationships later in life. But, what's so inspiring about Wendy and her experiences is not just that she faced all these challenges, but that she found ways to rise above them and to heal and share her journeys with others.
And Wendy doesn't shy away from telling her truth. In her book, she takes us through some very personal chapters, and she pairs them with hope. It's about honesty, but also about transformation.
Yes, and we can all benefit from that. And we'll be talking with her about what it was like to walk through those darker times. And also, there's a copy of her book for those of you on YouTube. And that's a picture of you, Wendy, right?
It is.
And so we also want to talk about how you discovered sobriety and what helped you make that turning point, and how celebrity encounters along the way shaped your perspective on life.
I think listeners will connect, not just with the story of surviving adversity, but also with the idea that reinvention is possible at any stage.
Absolutely. And it's almost always called for anyway. So whether you've faced your own ACEs or you're just curious about how people overcome tough beginnings, this conversation will resonate.
So let's bring her on, settle in with a coffee or a wine. And we're so pleased to welcome Wendy Correa to Late Boomers.
Absolutely. Wendy.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much. It's wonderful to be here with both of you.
And it's great to have you.
Yeah, where are you coming in from today? Where do
I'm
you
in
live?
Denver, Colorado.
Oh,
wonderful.
one of my favorite states. I love Colorado.
And Wendy, for our listeners who may not be familiar with the term ACE, can you explain, do you call it ACE or do you call it ACE?
ACE.
ACE. So can you explain what it means more in detail and why it's such a powerful framework for understanding childhood trauma?
Yes. And let me just begin by telling you and the listeners what My Pretty Baby is about. I always like to say that My Pretty Baby is an autopsy of my family.
Oh.
I peeled apart the layers of intergenerational and childhood trauma, family dysfunction, family secrets and addiction. And I eventually found healing through Buddhism, meditation, yoga, sobriety, music, psychotherapy, and Native American spirituality. Along the way, I had incredible encounters with icons like Joni Mitchell and Ringo Starr and HunterS.Thompson. And My Pretty Baby is about resilience, recovery, and creating your own chosen family when the one you had is broken. So we can jump right into what the ACE study and why it is important. the Adverse Childhood Experiences study found that 2/3 of adults had at least 1 out of 10 ACEs on a quiz that you can take online. It's a 1 to 10 quiz that you can easily find online. And so 2/3 of adults have at least one, and 1 in 6 adults has 4 or more. And
Wow.
so the trauma that you carry from childhood and adolescence can increase your risk for addiction and mental illness and many physiological illnesses, such as heart disease and irritable bowel. And the
Oh,
reason that I wanted to write this book is because this is my call to action, that we need to have these conversations that you're giving me the opportunity right here and now to talk about, because trauma is a public health issue.
It really, really is. And talk a little bit more about the process, the actual process you went through with all of the healing that you did do.
Absolutely. And I just want to touch back that in one of the books that I've read, because while I was writing my book, I read numerous books by Gabor Mate and Bessel van der Kolk and Peter Levine and Nadine Burke. And in Nadine Burke's book, The Deepest Well, she found that if a child had a score of 6 or more ACEs, their life expectancy can decrease by 20 years. And I have an ACE score
wow.
of 7 out of 10. But the good news is that research is proving that the damage can be reversed with the exact modalities that I intuitively have practiced for the last 45 years. So when I left home at 17 and left Illinois for California, there was an intuition that guided me. I was immediately drawn to Buddhism and meditation and nature, hiking, and eventually I found my way in Los Angeles. I worked in the music industry, and music was one of my biggest outlets as a kid growing up because it was free. It was on the radio. I listened to WLS in Chicago, and music was my respite. Music really saved me. So eventually I found my way into the music industry because I thought music was one of the highest forms of human expression. And I wanted to be a part of that because I knew it was so powerful. And at the same time, in Los Angeles, I also was involved with a community that practiced Native American spirituality. And for many years, I practiced that spirituality. And I also got sober and started attending AA meetings in Los Angeles that were mostly for people in the music industry and musicians. I also was getting my master's degree in clinical psychology at Antioch University. And as a student of Antioch, you needed to also go through psychotherapy yourself, which was, hello, very important for me. And that opened a lot of windows for me of reclaiming myself and reclaiming my story and understanding how trauma worked. And then I also, in writing, there's a lot of research to show James Pennebaker is one of the leading researchers of using writing as catharsis, using writing for healing. So I did a lot of journaling and writing. And that was also at one point when I was studying acting, I started practicing yoga. And then I started to learn how the somatic practices were also very important to go along with the psychotherapy. So doing yoga, dance, movement, walking, hiking, singing, and meditating are all somatic practices or
Oh,
those,
good to know.
grounded.
Yeah, I haven't heard
grounded
that
in the
term so
body.
much.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's great. You've had some fascinating encounters with celebrities along the way, we know, but how did these experiences impact you? And did they shape the way you saw yourself during difficult times?
Yes. And the reason that I wrote about them is because these celebrities and were so kind to me, and they reflected back to me my own self-worth.
Can you
And
tell us a little bit about one of the encounters or two of the
Right.
encounters?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So the first was I was living and working in Los Angeles, and I had a friend, Boyd Elder, who is now passed. He's an artist, and he designs mini album covers. And one day he came to a restaurant where I was working, and he'd taken me to a lot of his friends' homes. So I knew he knew a lot of people, and I always enjoyed going with him to meet famous people. But one day he came to pick me up and he said, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. Well, mind you, I was working at a restaurant in Malibu called the Jetty, where we served barbecue, and there was, sawdust on the floor. And I wore a white bowling shirt and jeans and high tops. And, my white shirt is covered in barbecue sauce. And, I'm like, okay, Boyd, whatever. So we started driving up Pacific Coast Highway. But when we pulled into the Malibu colony, then I was like, wait a minute, Boyd, where are we going? Who am I meeting? And oh my gosh, do I have any makeup on? I mean, I've been sweating and working all day and I have barbecue sauce on me. And as we're walking to the door, he says, she doesn't care what you look like. And I'm like, Boyd, who is she? Who is she? And he rings the bell, and here Joni Mitchell opens the door.
Wow. What an
Yeah.
experience.
And I was fortunate enough to have many times that I spent with Joni Mitchell, and she always treated me like a sister. We talked about, silly things about hairstyles and, if we were ever going to be able to quit smoking. And on all of those occasions, she was just so kind and thoughtful and generous towards me. And I sat there thinking, why is Joni Mitchell being so kind and loving towards me? I'm no one. I'm not famous. I'm nobody.
So did you have a little bit imposter syndrome where you
Oh,
felt
absolutely, of course.
unworthy of?
Well, I always felt, because of my family situation, I felt unlovable was what the issue was for me. And so Joni was one of the people like, well, wait a minute, if Joni Mitchell is kind and loving to me, why isn't my own family? And, you know, F-bomb them, because if Joni Mitchell likes me, who cares? She
Right.
she really reflected back to me some self-worth. And so that experience and, all of the other times that I spent with her, I it fed me. It fed me my self-worth and my self-esteem that maybe I actually was lovable.
Mm.
And what about Ringo? I've met him a couple
I was
times.
about to ask that.
I've met him a couple times. He's delightful. I just wondered what that
Named
was.
her dog Ringo.
Oh yeah, and I gave him, it was a rescue dog, so I gave him Ringo Starr's birthday too.
Oh, that's adorable.
That's amazing. He's a wonderful guy.
He is a wonderful guy, and I wish I had been able to spend as much time with Ringo too as I spent with Joni. But Ringo I met because we're sort of jumping ahead, but that's fine
Oh,
too.
okay.
I got arrested for a DUI. I was in the music industry, and I was given court-ordered AA meetings. And so the very first meeting that I walked into in West LA, I was shaking in my boots. I had no idea what to expect. And here walks up to me this gentleman who I know very well who he is, but he reaches out to shake my hand and greet me. And he said, hello, my name is Richard. And of course, I was like, well, your name might be Richard, but it's also Ringo.
Right.
And his lovely wife, Barbara Bach, was behind him, and she also shook my hand. And I sat there in my first AA meeting thinking, oh my God, if Ringo Starr can get sober with everything that surrounds him, then I can too. And if he's this dedicated and committed to show up to AA meetings to greet newbies, then I can do that too.
Oh,
So, that
he wrote a song about it.
That was my first AA meeting. And of course, I'm not outing anyone's sobriety because it's very well known that Ringo and Barbara are, decades long
very
sober.
Long.
But the point of telling that story to my readers is that you never know what the kindness of one person, how it might affect you. Not everybody that you meet is going to be, the celebrity. And I'm not, I happen to live in Los Angeles and I worked in the music industry. And so I really only went at the time. I'm 38 years sober. So this is a long time ago.
Wow.
But I went only to AA meetings that were specifically for people in the music industry. Mm-hmm. So it was,
it's good to network that way.
Right. And so, not everyone, I want everybody to go to AA meetings that, that if they need to, but don't assume that a celebrity is going to come up and greet you.
Right. Well, what about Thompson? Because he's a wild guy, or was.
Yes. So I was sober and I left Los Angeles for Aspen, Colorado to be a DJ on KSPN FM. And my program manager told me, he's like, do you know who HunterS.Thompson is? And I was like, I think he's, I've read some of his articles in Rolling Stone magazine, and isn't he in the Doonesbury cartoons? And he's like, yeah, but okay, well, you're probably going to get calls from him in the middle of the night, because as the newbie DJ, my shift was 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. So sure enough, at 4 in the morning, I get a call and, the phone rings and I'm like, it's Wendy Moore rocking you on KSPN FM. Good morning. And Hunter says, oh, yeah, good morning. Can you play me some Warren Zevon, Lawyers, Guns, and Money? And I obviously knew who it was. So I said, hey, good morning, Hunter. Sure, I can play you Warren Zevon. So I don't know how much time passed, but, pretty much every night he would call me and ask me to play Warren Zevon or some other song. And, living in Aspen at the time, I had to work like 10 jobs. So I was also waitressing again. And here comes Hunter and sits in at my table and in my station. And so I went up to, of course, get his order for lunch, but then I introduced myself to say, hey, Hunter, not only am I your waitress today, but I'm also your DJ. And he's like, oh, yeah, I really like you. And by the end of his lunch, he said, I need an assistant. You want the job? And I was like, yeah, I want the job. Of course I want the job. As a fledgling writer at the time, I was like, I want to be, around HunterS.Thompson. And so I worked for Hunter for a while and have some wild stories about Hunter, but it was mostly what was so, again, the reason that I tell the story, I was completely sober. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. I didn't like guns. I didn't know anything about politics or sports. And those were all things that Hunter did. So I was, working with him, filing papers and whatever, answering the phone and sifting through boxes in his basement. But he knew that I didn't drink. He knew I didn't smoke, while he was sitting there doing everything, in front of me. And the only thing he ever offered me was, hey, you want to go out and blow something up? Because he's notorious for blowing things up. And
Oh,
I guess, you guys know who HunterS.Thompson is?
Yeah,
I didn't, but I know Doonesbury. I'm not sure Gary Trudeau.
Well, so you do know Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, with
Right,
Johnny
right.
Depp, right?
Right.
Kathy?
Yeah, ish.
Okay, so
Ish.
you could
Ish.
you could
I don't
watch
remember.
a documentary about Hunter. He
Okay.
was a bigger than life character, and even with all of that, with the guns and the drugs, again, the reason that I wrote about Hunter is because he was so kind and generous with me.
Oh,
And he reflected back to me my self-worth. He made me feel like a whole person. And I loved him for that. And when I left to move to Chicago, because on the radio, I also met my future husband, and he and
Oh,
I
good.
left Aspen and we moved to Chicago. But when I left, I always was like, I'll see you again, Hunter. And I'm very sad that I'll never see Hunter again because, as you know, he committed suicide.
yeah. So, okay, changing that subject to what was the turning point for you that led you to your sobriety? Was there a single moment or a series of realizations?
Well, when I left home at 17 and moved to California and put myself through college and then transferred to Humboldt State, I was searching. I was searching for healing. I was searching for wholesomeness. I was searching for my tribe. I was searching for where I belonged. I was searching for spirituality and to find meaning in life. And that's when I found the Buddhism and hiking. And I started to heal myself. But then, like I said, I moved to Los Angeles and worked in the music industry. And I would feel good about myself. And then I would, be using alcohol and cocaine and drugs and to numb the pain. And it was getting arrested. I was partying on Sunset Strip at Sushi on Sunset with a band and, drove home towards Venice Beach where I lived. And I got pulled over and I just hoped that the police thought with my fishnet black stockings and my short little, leather mini skirt and my rabbit fur jacket that the police thought I looked, like Tina Turner, cool rock and roll, and not as a hooker. So, but I was thrown in jail. And like I said, I couldn't drive except to work, to the grocery store, and to AA meetings for a year. And I had court ordered AA meetings. And so the huge turning point was that
The arrest.
was the arrest, and then walking into an AA meeting and seeing the likes of Ringo Starr, that I'm not alone. And there were many celebrities in the AA meetings that I sat in.
Yeah.
That time, a lot of people were needing to get sober. And so I was not alone. And so that
was great.
a huge turning point for me. And then I was sober for 5 years when I decided I really needed to let go of the nicotine as well. And so finally, 5 years later, I was able to get clean from nicotine.
That's great. And writing a book like this takes a lot of courage. So how did the act of writing help you heal?
Well, what's interesting, when I first went to Los Angeles, I was studying acting. And in my acting class, it was the Stanislavski method of acting. And we did an exercise called sense memory.
Yes.
Where we sit in a chair. And this is back in the day of primal screaming. So to warm up, there was a mattress on the floor and we would flail and do these like very guttural vocalizations and then sit in front of the class. And I was to relay a childhood memory in front of my class and using all of the senses. So you're using sight, sound, touch, hearing. And I started describing, my father died when I was 7. And I was describing a scene when I was about 4 with my father. And I was following him around the backyard, and he was tending to his strawberry patch. And he chose the biggest, juiciest strawberry out of the patch and wiped off the dirt and popped it into my mouth. And so I was describing the succulent, juices and the taste of the strawberry. And then there was this beautiful lattice braided archway that was just heavy with honeysuckle. And so I'm describing the sense of smell, which it turns out the sense of smell is the strongest sense that we have and is directly connected to a lot of childhood memories, because that is when we're first really growing and developing these senses. And I thought this was a beautiful, happy memory. And that's why I chose it. I'm going to choose this happy memory of my dad. But as I'm going through this exercise, my teacher, who was a famous acting teacher in LA, I used to love just to say his name, Piorino Mascarino. He would say to me, Wendy, speak to him, speak to your father. And I couldn't. There were these emotions just roiling in my body that that were not familiar to me, that were not connected to this happy little memory that I was trying to come up with. And eventually I sputtered out, I'm mad at you. And I was shocked because I had no idea that I was mad at my father who died when I was 7. And I learned how powerful using the senses are in evoking memories. And so for an actor, those using sense memory helps you to develop a more authentic and three-dimensional character. But when I started writing My Pretty Baby in 2015, and I started taking a lot of writing classes, and I created what I call my own MFA program, because I took lots of classes and I read dozens and dozens of memoir and craft books. And I drew upon that sense memory exercise from decades ago to recreate the scenes that I wanted to write. And of course, I put around me my photos and journals and letters and emails, but also internet research. And I used my senses to recreate what I wanted to write about. So in the opening scene, it's 1964, and I'm in a voting booth. I'm 4 years old. I'm in a voting booth with my mother. She's voting for JFK, and I can smell her Estee Lauder Youth Dew perfume.
Oh, well.
And that evokes those memories so vividly. And so to really get to the point of your question, Cathy, because those sense memory is so powerful, there were certainly times in writing my book that resulted in heaving sobs of, sadness and grief and sort of reliving it in real time.
But then it actually gets it all out of your body, right?
But also I was in therapy. And so with the therapist's help, I had numerous practices for not just getting it out, but really processing it. So one of the techniques that is considered one of the best for trauma, for PTSD or complex PTSD, which is what I have, is called EMDR.
Oh, with the eyes.
Eye movement desensitization.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that actually you're answering the question I've had on my mind as to the tools and practices that you've learned to keep moving forward. And it sounds like you're still using sense memory. Tell us a little more about the EMD. When old wounds resurface?
Yeah. So as I was writing my book, I was working with this therapist and using EMDR to relay to her these memories. So EMDR helps you to basically process, it's called bilateral stimulation of the brain. It just helps to take the zing and the re traumatization out of remembering those events. So, of course, you still remember the events, but it takes that emotional zing out of it and it helps the brain to process those memories. And the other tool that she used was something called IMTT, image transformation therapy, which is using breath work and visualization also to gently release those memories. So luckily for me, while I was writing the book, I was also, I have been in therapy for on and off for many years. But during the process of writing my book, it was really important to have that support and to be able to go through the process as I was writing and to process it really fully. I've also done inner child work. I've done a lot of work to heal myself and to process the trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've shown such strength in turning pain into something that can inspire others. What do you hope readers take away from My Pretty Baby? And I know they'll take a lot away from this podcast.
I hope that my readers um, will take away that although trauma is universal, so is healing. And telling the truth about what happened isn't about blame or retribution, it's about breaking cycles and healing. And especially if you have children, I feel like one of the greatest gifts that you can give your children is to be a cycle breaker yourself and to know that
Mhm.
healing is not only possible, but it's contagious in the best sense of the word. Because when you are healed, then you can bring others up and you can be a beacon of light to other people. So I really hope that My Pretty Baby is that beacon of light, maybe for someone else who's struggling about, wondering how to begin, where to begin their own healing process.
Well, there's certainly a lot of suggestions in your story by itself. You've tried every modality, and people can look to that and follow your
Right.
your plan. That's pretty good start. And Wendy, looking ahead, what's next for you? More writing or speaking or some new projects?
Well, right now, I am just so excited. My Pretty Baby actually launches, a month from now, and my
Mhm.
book launch will be in Denver at my beloved bookstore, Tattered Cover. And
Oh.
then the next day, I fly to Los Angeles, and I'll
Oh,
be at Diesel, a
oh,
bookstore.
Oh, we live
you
in
have
Los
to let us
Angeles.
know. Yes,
We'll come.
we're in.
We'll
Oh,
come.
well,
Well, there it
let
is.
us know.
But we got to know the
November. I'm going to
date.
let you know right now. It's November 9th. It's a Sunday at 3 p.m. And it's going to be moderated by the remarkable Renee Montagne from NPR.
Oh,
Mhm.
Yes. And I will be
At Diesel. The
at
one
Diesel.
that's in Santa Monica, right?
yes, it's in
Santa
Santa Monica.
at the
Yeah.
Brentwood Country Mart.
Right.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
November 9th at 3 p.m. And Renee Montagne, and then one of my She Writes Press is my publisher. One of my She Writes Press sisters, Jacqueline Jackson, is also going to be there with me with her book. And then I will also be in the San Francisco Bay Area in Corte Madera at Book of Passage on December 6th. And that will be a panel with my publisher, Brooke Warner, moderating. And then I'll be in Aspen, Colorado at Explore Books. And I'll be at the Barnes & Noble in Colorado Boulevard in Denver on December 15th.
You've got quite a tour.
You really do.
And
And the best time of year to be in Aspen, I will say.
oh, yes, it's going to be a lot of fun. And
That's going to be amazing. And I'm just going to go out on a limb here, Mary, and suggest that if anyone comes up to us at the Diesel Books, they can see us on YouTube right now. If you're listening on audio, check us out so you can recognize us. Anybody comes up and says they heard this podcast, they're going to get a prize.
oh,
well, what
once
a grand idea.
Once you send me the links, once you send me the clips, we're going to put, my publicist will be putting this out there, and I'll be putting it out there. And I
would just like to know that someone heard it, showed up at a book signing. That's an amazing thing in itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we better find out what kind of pies to get.
Oh, no. What prize?
Oh, well, prize. Why not a pie?
A prize, not pies.
She thought you were.
We're not giving away pies except maybe in the face.
When I thought
cream
she said
pie.
I thought, oh, what kind of pie?
Prize.
So cute.
They're going to get a prize. We will discuss that and figure it out, Mary.
We'll figure it out.
We don't know what the prize is yet.
Might be a cookie.
Well, by all
It'll
means,
be a good prize.
bring some swag. Bring some swag.
Yeah.
You can bring some swag,
Absolutely.
and you'll find other people there that you would like to have on your show. So by all means, come and bring the swag.
Okay.
That is great.
Cool.
Well, thank you, Wendy. You've been amazing for us and for everybody listening. I hope they'll buy your book, and I know they will. I certainly will.
It is available for pre-order, My Pretty Baby, and you can buy it wherever you buy your books. It's available now for pre-order. So Bookshop, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Simon & Schuster, it's all there. And then you'll get it on actually November 4th when the book comes out. But I also want you to know that I recorded my own audiobook. So that will also be available on November 4th, along with the book, the ebook, the print book.
That'll be beautiful because you have a beautiful speaking voice.
You really do.
So that'll be lovely to listen to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, my pretty baby.
Thank you. Well,
thank you for this opportunity. It was lovely to be with you, Mary and Cathy.
And for our listeners, you can learn more about Wendy at her website, wendybcorrea.com. That's WendyBcorrea.com. And of course, pick up a copy of her book, My Pretty Baby.
And we encourage all of our listeners to reach out to Wendy, read her book, and continue the conversation about healing from ACEs and finding the resilience and courage that she has so deftly found in her life.
And as always, thank you for listening to Late Boomers. Please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. And if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button for sure so you never miss an episode.
And they can also reach me on Instagram at Wendy B. Correa and on Facebook as just Wendy Correa.
Okay.
Perfect.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.us. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.